It's episode 9. We are on the Ruxley with our very special guest, my great friend, professional racing driver, Oli Webb.
Thanks very much for having me.
Oli, great to have you here. Now, listen, for me, there's two Ollies now. So I'm going to call you Oli Webb, Oli. Oli, I'm going to call you Choc.
Oh, you got a cool nickname.
I love that. I'm used to that with UMB anyway, so
I like calling you Choc.
Saves the confusion. Welcome, Oli. How's the Ruxley?
Very comfy. Yeah, I get the whole thing to myself. Loving it.
I know. It's cool, isn't it? I love it. Feels good. Home from home on the Ruxley.
Home from home. And the irony, we've got 109 sofa groups in the store. And just as we're about to go live with the podcast, I know Ollie's so, pressed for time. He's off to Italy this afternoon.
Yeah.
We have customers coming all the way from Derbyshire to test the Ruxley.
To test it out. The famous Ruxley.
So we had to delay this. So, Oli, listen, we're so grateful to you to give up your time. I know how busy you are. We know how your schedule is insane. So thank you very much.
No problem at all. No problem. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Really excited about this one, Oli. I think we'll kick things off. We talk on this podcast about identity, and I think I can try my best to do that. But I think it's best for you to tell us your story, a bit of a backstory, who you are and what you're all about.
Oh, God. From the beginning, then. Yeah, so motorsport is what I do.
Yeah.
Motorsport is what I'm passionate about. And I found that, motorsport's a weird one to get into, right? You when you're younger, you play instruments, you color in, you go outside, you play sports, but you don't fall into a race car like you do with footballs and other sports. So it's an interesting one. My passion for motorsport came from one of those just arrive and drive go-kart style situations, a birthday party here, and then we're in holiday in France, I think, one time, and I ended up in a go-kart there with the family and kind of fell in love with it a little bit there. It wasn't through a lot of motorsport families, it passes down to the kid, but there's been no motorsport in my family pre myself, so it was just these random arrive and drive like circus go-karts or Daytona Manchester.
And that was at 9 years old.
And that was that was at about 9 years old. And then it just stayed as a little bit of a hobby I did every now and then until I was about 12 or 13. And then I did, I say local in inverted commas, it was around the country, but a local UK karting championship, which at the time was Wigan Three Sisters, which is not far from here where we are, and go-kart track called GYG, which is in Wales.
Right.
Again, not too far away. And I was able to do that on the weekends with the support of my father, who drove me because I didn't have a road license at that point. I was still very young, and support me going in that go-kart. And I was lucky enough to win that championship. And then it became like instantly a full goal of mine to do. And then I'm sure we'll go on to talk about all the other years that I was in it, but that basically then progressed on to every year's racing I did.
Oli, listened really with interest to your interview you did last year on the Road to Success podcast. And you say that when you got into go-karting, then it was in the hundreds, low thousands, to get on. But you said now go-karting to get into those championships that you refer to can be multiple hundreds. For the average boy or girl, how do they get into it with that much money being required?
It's a really good question. It's one that the motorsport community are constantly trying to work on. We will never escape the fact that it is the most probably, or one of the most expensive sports that exists. It's impossible to avoid, but it is possible to improve. So you can go out and no matter your situation, to a point, anyone can kick a football around and practice that. Granted, who you know, not what you know, and all that helps once you become good at football or XYZ, rugby, whatever it is. But you can at least start and try it to see if you're good. Motorsport is a lot harder. So like you said, when I first started, it still wasn't a cheap sport. You could do proper karting for in the thousands of pounds. You could rent a go-kart, you can get a cheaper engine, you can just mechanic it yourself and off you pop. And then, you can do a test day for 50 quid for your entry slot and then a few £100 for a set of tires and you can go about it. Whereas now you can probably still do it close-ish to that, but you do terribly. So the point is that it's very much about the equipment. You have to have the top equipment to shine, to do well, and then you have to be in the right championships, which cost a lot more. So believe it or not, if you want to do go-karting properly, you will be in the hundreds of thousands to do it European-wise, which I know sounds absolutely bonkers. You can still do, and to answer your question, entry-level championships, which are much more affordable. There's team sport karting, Daytona Manchester, something called Club 100, and the introduction and growing popularity of sim racing, which people make. There's a lot of sim drivers who make a better living than physical drivers, which is a whole nother topic in itself. But there are a lot of programs now, scholarships, that help fund people who, for instance, went to Daytona Manchester karting for 50 quid, and they do quite well. Then you can win prizes to be able to accelerate up the ladder of karting. It does still get to a point where you'll need sponsorship, but there's programs out there that offer that. And when I did my first ever single seater year, which was former BMW, I went to apply for one of those scholarships, which is the only reason I was then able to do it.
You, at that age and you're winning championships, you can see you're really in the elite level. What was your aim then? And was it to get a seat in Formula One? Was that on your vision board, or what was it?
I'd say after the first year karting, yes, it was immediately. It was everything I eat, slept, and breathed. It was. I think before that, I didn't really have, as probably you don't need to when you're kind of 12 years old, but I didn't have anything that I excelled at or that I thought I excelled at. I didn't have a passion. I knew I had this internal feeling that I wanted to be dedicated to something, but I didn't know what that was yet. Which can be a plus and a negative in someone's personality. You can get dedicated to the wrong thing, but I ended up being dedicated to the right thing. I was never really a partier when I was younger. I was never really into. I wasn't as social as the other people in my age group, and I knew when I started karting that I could put everything into that, and that related to the subjects I picked at school, the things I did in between when I was at race weekends. It was everything, and it was all consuming, and I don't really think that stopped. It probably needs to stop a little bit more. It has changed slightly, but maybe not in the ways that you'd think.
Well, that's quite interesting. Really great to hear you speak so powerfully and clearly really passionate about what you do. And like I mentioned about the identity. So I'd just like to take a moment now just to kind of reflect back maybe 10 years. And we'll start with that. And I think how your journey has moved along and how you've changed and grown as an individual. So we'll start by looking back 10 years to now, but then I also want to go forward 10 years and see where Oli Webb is headed.
Yeah, I think 10. I don't. In terms of my grounding and personality, I'd say it'll probably change more in the future 10 years than it has done from the past 10 years. I think the motorsport journey has kept me within that same parameter of personality and dedication to what I do. Having a child, I have a little young girl, little 3-year-old, does change priorities in terms of logistical priorities. But what it doesn't change, or didn't for me, that I think people would expect, is it had absolutely no effect to me in the car,
Right.
which took a while for me to admit, because you almost feel guilty that if you're driving 200 mile an hour towards a wall and you've got family to think about, that you should care.
I can't
more.
imagine it's very much that slows you down in the car, though, Ollie.
No. I think I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I had that on my mind. And you also would become less of a able driver if your mind is distracted, in the nicest way to say that, by those factors. So having a child, my gorgeous little girl, did not change myself in the car, and that's why I'm still the safe, quick driver that I am.
Yeah.
I think I would be more unsafe and more consciously driving rather than subconsciously driving, which is what I rely on, if I was doing that. Therefore, not
Subconsciously, that's what you
Yes.
rely on. Because I wanted to ask you about focus and meditation and your practices. So we start to kind of delve into like what you do off the track. When it comes to focus and like you say, that subconscious, how much does meditation play into you when you're in the car?
I I think from about a large part of it is off the track, is about that, and that for me started. I had absolutely no link or desire to the mental health side, to the meditation side, to the mind coaching side, until I was introduced to someone called Don, who at the time, a lot of the Red Bull, Ferrari, Racing Steps Foundation, these well-known driver academies were sending drivers to this mind coach who was based in Bath. It was very well known. People were flying all around the world to visit this person. And there's many people that do it, but he was quite early into this era, especially for young drivers. I think when I first started visiting him, I was only about 17.
Right.
And this was full mind coaching, meditative state sessions. I would drive in my little pimped up, stiff, overly uncomfortable Mini that I had as my first car. That I think Chock's Mini's a little bit more comfortable than mine. It's got some valuable assets of chocolate under the selfie. Mine just had a crazy guy driving up and down the country.
I'll take you for a ride in the Chockmobile
Yes,
anytime you want,
It'll
Ollie.
be a lot smoother as long as there's chocolate in there. I'm fine. And that was a big eye opener to me. It had a big effect because there was a lot of pressure that maybe young drivers, and I certainly didn't realize I had on my shoulders at that time, when those kind of 5 lights come on at the start of the grid and you're sat at the front, and at the time you don't realize, for instance, in Formula 3 at the time, they were just my peers sat around me. But now the people that were sat around me are living in America doing IndyCar. They're in Formula One, 4 of them. The people around me are all earning a very good living doing motorsport. And I was in a very good year of Formula 3. And at the time, you're just doing this thing that you want to win this particular race. You're only focused at and that mental side really, really helped. So yeah, I had a full mind coach for many years, as a lot of drivers did. We would be sent at the time, I'm old now, CDs.
Right, yeah.
CDs of meditative
Retro.
State. They would talk through effectively what
Yeah.
the race weekend would be, and we would listen to those. And I've applied that. I only went to him for 2 years. So I stopped when I was about 19, purely because that came through a scholarship that I was able to fund doing that.
Okay.
I would love to self-fund it, but it's very expensive to have a very good mind coach at the moment. But I've learned the ways enough that I do it for myself now, pre-race weekends, pre anything stressful I go into. So I'm very focused on the mental health side now, and the meditation side before race weekend.
It was interesting on one of the previous episodes. We talked about, I'm very much into ice baths and breath work, and we got lots of replies from that.
Yeah.
And in fact, our next guest, Joe, is an expert on breath work and ice baths. Are they also tools that you use? I mean, probably physically as well, ice baths might be good for you.
Yes, so hugely. Physically, we use it every single race weekend. So we have an ice bath on the race truck. Mentally, I would like to use it a lot more. Unfortunately, with the type of schedule that no one's guilty for this other than myself, that I've ended up booking myself into, is that it's very hard for me to do this on the regular. If I was retired living on a farm in Texas, this is just my vision. It's not
love
everyone
it.
else's. Then I would have an ice bath out on the porch, and I'd be in it every single morning. But logistically, there's not many Premier Inns that have them in the room, so
No.
it's a little bit harder
Not
to
yet.
jump into.
Oli Webb at a Premier Inn. Really? No. He's at the Corinthia in London, surely. The Ritz-Carlton. No.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to, you said something really interesting there about the guided meditation and how it was more of a visualization of what the race day looked like. Is the meditation more of a visualization? You're visualizing the end result, or winning, that kind of thing.
Exactly that. So there's a lot of breath work involved. There's several different types that we did. The ones that we did with our mind coach that Mercedes supplied that year was being on that grid, keeping our heart rate down as the lights go out. You have your foot on the clutch on this very fine biting point of where the clutch is going to engage, with your right hand half on the gear stick and half on this little electronic handbrake that would disengage the rear to allow you to pull away to get the best start, while your left hand was on this gear cut paddle and your eyes are on the lights, and everything has to move in sync. Muscles have to be as stable as possible. Your anxiety has to be as low as possible. And that was about mainly visualizing starts. And then after that, then your subconscious can take over, because you're very conscious at the start of a race, because you're not. Adrenaline is a very good and this connects to what I'm saying, adrenaline is a very good
Tool.
tool and numbing factor of everything you're doing when you're in a car. So we have a very high heart rate while we're driving, but a lot of that is adrenaline takeover. You're constantly in a fight or flight when you're in a race car, where your body is telling you to stop doing what you're doing, which
Wow.
is why it's for a very select few, because it constantly feels like it's in danger. But when you can drive subconsciously and rely on the tools that you've had over the last years and years that you've done of racing, it gets to a point where it becomes natural and your body just knows, okay, I trust him. He's not going to throw me into the side of a ditch.
That's
and
so
it can carry on.
interesting.
But the other forms of meditation I do are just to be able to sleep. I mean, for instance, this week alone, I'll be at a track, then I'll drive a couple of hours to an airport, get a flight back to another airport in another country, and then have to drive to a brand new location. And our bodies and minds don't like being in a different space every single day. And I'm in a different hotel bed every single night to a point.
Yeah.
So I have a different type of meditation that I use with music, with myself, with breath work to be able to go to sleep, which helps. And I can get to a point where I can fall into a nice deep sleep. And then you get up to go to the toilet in the dark and you think you're in the other hotel and you walk into a wall. That happens a lot. You'd be
Reality
surprised how
hit.
many times I get up and go, which bathroom am I in? Which one am I going to
Wow.
go to? So
you're constantly challenging yourself, not just on the track, but your lifestyle, being in different places, kind of not much of a routine. It's always like, stepping out of that zone and uncharted territories.
yeah.
One of the things that Ollie spoken about you in your earlier years is your tenacity in terms of getting sponsors. And where did that come in? Was that to you said about initially go-karting was costly, but was that to prove that I want to do this myself? Because that shows, I was really impressed when I heard that you'd sent over 100 emails out trying to get sponsored. You, Oli Webb, were doing that, not other people, not your team around you. You were doing that. So that shows real, because this podcast is all about people pivoting. I mean, that shows really good entrepreneurship and also just resilience, and
Complete dedication.
commitment, a
Yeah.
sincere commitment.
Yeah.
And you said something on that podcast about a lot of it is 1% driving, but 99% is the other stuff, is all that stuff. So that has to come from within. And I think that will equip you really well in business, but you are already business. How important is pivoting for you away from the track in terms of the social influence, the influences stuff and everything like that?
Yeah, it was a really important fact to me from an early age. I knew I was extremely fortunate to be in the position I was with my family, to be able to go karting straight away and go into my first couple of years of racing and first few years of racing with help, and not many people get that. So I already realized, I think what pushed me so hard is that I knew that I had such a good stepping stone that such a few percentage of people had, that it would be such an offense and such a waste to rely on it without doing all the work on top of that to be able to go further, because I did have this accelerated start. And I'd say to a point, probably 99% of the people who are in Formula One also had that accelerated start. It is the way it gets, and kudos to the people who don't have that and still manage to make it. But unlike these other sports that I'm referring to, if I didn't do 99% of all the work on the side, I wouldn't even get onto the pitch to be able to kick the first kick of the football. So that's different. It is a tough sport. Every sport's tough, but I find motorsport so intriguing in all the factors that you have to do around it, because I keep referring to football, and it's no particular reason. It's just because you need an empty square to be able to kick the ball, and it's just as difficult, the sport itself, football, but to get to your first kick is a lot quicker. So that's why doing all the work on the side is so important, because when you do get there, you're very tired because you've done all the work on the side to be able to get to it, but at least you know that you have another shot of it. So I knew that I had this accelerated start and I just never wanted it to end. And I think it was more the fear of knowing this is going to end any minute. Every single year, I think this could end. So I need to try and do everything I possibly can to make sure that when it does become not possible for the family anymore, or the sponsors that I had, or BMW when they were helping fund me because they can drop you any minute, that I had the whole tool set in the background to make it work myself when they did inevitably drop or move on.
And you're quite right. And we have to start in terms of if you go to Ollie's Instagram, the first medal emoji is Le Mans 2014 series champion, the holy trinity of motorsport, along with the F1 in Monaco. Is that right? And Indy 500. congratulations. My brother Rob, who you very kindly gave pit lane passes with Geraldine and Mark and Jill Hughes. Rob tells of Le Mans, it's such a historic, prestigious race. The Friday before you're driving in classic cars around the old town of Le Mans. There's so much history, there's so much heritage. To have that on your CV, Ollie,
So prestigious,
is incredible.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Do you want to share the 2014 Le Mans experience?
It was, an incredible year. Probably one of my favourites alongside Formula 3. It was a really important and mentally tough year for me because it was this pivot, which a lot of people have. It's becoming a little bit more normal now. It's very motorsport niche, this, so I won't go too in depth. But everyone starts wanting to be in Formula One. Everyone gets in a go-kart, wants to be in Formula One. No one gets into anything wanting to be okay at it or halfway up whatever championship ladder they go to. They want to go to the top. And that was the year where I'd exhausted all my single-seater options. I'd had Formula One test reserve driver contracts. I'd realized that actually this is not going to be a feasible lifestyle. None of them were very favorable in terms of, you think people, when they first get into Formula One, they immediately get given millions. It's not like that. A lot of the time you have to bring a lot of budget. So I'd moved to America. I tried Indy. I loved America. We can talk about that at some
Yeah, I'd
point.
love to.
And that was amazing. And 2013, I left America and got this opportunity with Alpine. Some people know the brand from Formula One. They were the Le Mans team that offered me a contract. Now, at that point in time, there was half my brain that was like, this is a step back. If I go into that, I'll never get to Formula One. This is a sidestep. This isn't what I want to do. And it was the best thing I ever did. And I wished I did it a lot earlier. So, yeah, I went into Le Mans. We won the European Le Mans Championship that very first year I went in. We got on the podium at Le Mans itself.
That must have been a feeling.
It was, yeah, unbelievable. You know, half a million people come to Le Mans and having hundreds of thousands of people underneath the podium at that time. When I realized at that point, I can now make a career out of this, and I've made the right decision. You know, for me, for my future family, for myself to move forwards in anything I wanted to do from that point.
So that's on the. Sorry to stop you there, Ollie, but on the podium, that was a bit of a reflecting mode. You're reflecting there, looking back, looking forward, a belief builder in that you'd done all the right things and that you were exactly where you needed to be. Because you hear some people speak about winning and success as almost sometimes a low moment, and clearly in this case, you felt you enjoyed the moment, you're present, and.
I was very, I've got to say very briefly, for a very short amount of time, and motorsport is a very, very strange sport that we don't play or race as often as you would do other sports. So when you do get these big races that happen once a year and you have that moment and you are one of 280 drivers at the time at Le Mans, your chances of stepping onto that podium are very slim versus when you play a match against another team in rugby or whatever. You either come first or you come second in that match. In this race, you can come first or you can come last by a lot of places. So you have that reflective moment, and it was incredible. But every single Monday morning, we do get that low, and you get that low of that extreme adrenaline that you've had for 24 hours or however long the race has been. I even just had this last weekend when we won a race. You have that incredible enjoyment. You go to bed, you wake up, you go back into the airport. You're like every other person when you sit in that airport. You're getting back on the plane. And not only has your adrenaline been peaked all weekend from the physical sport itself, but the excitement and the high of achieving what you need. But it's just like any drug. And then it needs to be better the next time. So then you spend the whole week almost at a little bit of a depressing low trying to get back to it.
That is a really interesting point. I love your understanding of that, though, because I think that must really help in that situation, because you're in that low moment, that low day. You understand why. It doesn't make it any easier, but at least you understand it's part of that cycle. And I think that's one thing that I'm starting to get to know, is that in my life, I'll have like weekends of doing chocolate parties, and when I've, it is adrenaline. I don't really think enough about that and respect it enough as I should. Nick, like yourself, when you do speaking events and things like that, there's a real buzz and adrenaline that comes with it. But then you go to the next day and sometimes you think, oh, what's up with me today?
And sometimes you go flat. What I found or find is ice baths is a really good leveler for me.
Yeah.
And it just takes me back in the moment and I relax, I reflect. We did that intense breath work, didn't we, at the farm club?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a meditative state. But sometimes you could appreciate it. Ollie opened up, I think it was 3 episodes ago. He just He just didn't feel right. It was the day before we went on air, and I kind of detected that because we're every day voice noting, messaging, ideas, and I just thought he was a bit quieter, and I was fine, and I kind of sensed that.
Yeah.
But you were good enough, and to kind of share that, and I can totally understand where Ollie's at. 1 minute he's winning a race, and where that has to come down. What goes up comes down. My mum always says, "Never be too excited when things go well, or never too down when things go badly." And I think mums are always right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
But no, I mean, there's so much touch on. I think there's a good opportunity now for a little break. Back in a second.
Perfect. This episode of Sofa Stories is brought to you by Minerva. MYNURVA is a leading provider of one-to-one therapy delivered by highly qualified therapists. Minerva is proud to support the mental health of many individuals, as well as working with universities, corporations, and football clubs such as Blackburn Rovers. Nick and I speak often about our own challenges with mental health on and off the sofa, and we realise the importance of opening up, and possibly you can relate to that. If you are struggling emotionally, going through a difficult life event, or experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety, Minerva can help. Minerva offers a safe, confidential space to talk through your concerns and help you to get the support you need. There are no waiting lists, and therapy can be accessed immediately. Minerva is offering all Sofa Stories listeners and viewers 10% off therapy sessions. Simply visit www.mynurva.com/Sofa Stories to book online and enter the code SOFASTORIES10 to redeem your discount. But for now, it's back to the sofa. Enjoy the rest of the show. And we're back after the break. Ollie, absolutely loving this today. So just a little nod to Minerva there, the sponsor of the show. We're talking a little bit about mental health, and we talked about adrenaline. And I just wondered, even though you know the cycle and you kind of know the highs and lows and what might be coming, how do you deal with that? Do you let it go, ride the storm? Do you combat it using different tools?
It's tough. Like we spoke about, the adrenaline that you get from driving fast race cars and then winning in fast race cars is so high, and that is my drug, and that is why I fight every day to be in a car in some form or another, and keep that, shall I say, healthy drug consistent. But combating it is a real tough one. The ice baths we spoke about earlier are a really good form of calming you and distracting your body. But in a way, an ice bath is what my race car is you don't really have the ability to think about anything else at that time because your body's in shock. And that's why it's so addictive. There's a lot of
That parallels between the two.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a lot of very high end businessmen that retire and come into motorsport in the classic scene that I race in and other forms, who have had a very stressful life. And you think motorsport would be the worst thing in the world, but actually they can't think about their job or their stresses or their home life or anything else when they're in that race car, because the adrenaline takes over, and it really is like an automotive therapy. It's a meditative state when you're in that race car. So it's hard to, I mean, I'm going around the houses to your question, but I combat that adrenaline by working outside of the car as much as I can to get back into the car.
Wow.
So that it leads on to, if I'm in the gym, I'm working because I know I'll be fitter, so I'll be able to feel better in the car for longer. Or if I'm in meetings for sponsorship or partners or race teams or engineering meetings, it's leading back to being quicker in the car, which will give me another contract so I can be in the car more often. And that has changed slightly now that obviously I've got a little girl, and now I want to be back to her as much as possible. But again, in a selfish way, but works out for her as well, is seeing her is really good therapy for me, which is a distraction from motorsport. That means when I go back to that, my mental capacity is much more open to be able to do better at my sport as well.
I can totally understand that. Listening to sports, or whether football managers or something like that, or footballers, and they lose a game and they go back home and they don't want to speak to anyone, and then just having a daughter or a son just completely.
Yeah, and also like footballers will get on the golf course, won't they? So it's like almost taking yourself out of that thing you do, and when you get in the zone to race, take your head out of that situation into another one, immerse yourself into being a dad, or being in the ice bath or something, and then when you come back, you feel fresh again and motivated, ready to race.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what when you get in the car, what's happening to your body? Do you feel like you go into this zone in your that your mind and body has to be in a specific state ready to race?
Yeah, it's everything that leads up to that moment is fuel and ammunition and data for when you get into the car and you've done it enough and you've done your preparation, then almost the thinking and the hard work stops, and you can just rely then on your own skill and ability to drive as subconsciously as you possibly can, especially in like a qualifying lap where it's one lap, you against the clock, alone on track. That's really those kind of uh, moments where you realize that everything you've put together comes
Mm.
together in that one lap. But it's
Wow. And I'm just wondering, like, is it intense concentration, or is it almost like you disconnect to go subconscious, like almost come away from it slightly?
there are things that bring it's both. It depends on it depends on the situation. There can be moments at Le Mans at night where you've been in the car for many hours already and you've gone into this pattern and routine and subconscious driving, and it's just happening, and an hour can go by that feels like a lap. Or if we're doing a sprint race, and for instance, a couple of weeks ago in Paul Ricard in France, and you've got 35 GT3 cars around you, and it's dry on one side of the track, and there's a downpour on the other, and doors are banging into each other, then you're very much conscious, and
Mm.
adrenaline is taking over, and it's a stressful environment, and you come out more tired from a 1 hour race than you can from a 24-hour race that's gone well. So it's a mix of both.
And typically, nothing from the exterior world is coming into your mind. Am I right in thinking that?
No, pretty much never. And I think if it is, then you kind of need to snap back into your reality at that point. You have, for those, this is a little bit more of a motorsporty answer, but for anyone who's into Formula One and they watch it and they hear engineers speaking to the drivers, 99% of the time that's fine. But all of a sudden, if you see a driver is on the last two laps and it's a fight for a very important position, you'll hear the engineer speak and the driver will shout back and tell them to shut the F up, leave me alone. And that's because they want to be in that subconscious state. And all the attention has to be on the exact thing they're doing at that point in time. They don't have any more mental capacity for anyone else or outside life at that point in time.
Wow.
It's really interesting. I was just thinking about this in the break. About you mentioned Formula One, and one of the things I'm trying to get my head around in the FIA Endurance Championship that you're on in F1, a Lewis Hamilton, Hamilton and Max Verstappen signs a 4-year deal with Red Bull if it's Max, or Mercedes if it's Hamilton. But I see on Instagram, 1 minute you're driving a Mustang, next minute you're driving a McLaren, next minute yesterday you're driving a Porsche. You're flying to Monza today. I don't even know what car you're going to drive in Monza today. Spero che è una macchina italiana. I hope it's an Italian car. But what is it? Just can you explain to the listener, to us, the difference between the Endurance Championship in terms of having a seat in a car to compared to Formula One?
So yeah, so both endurance championship and almost everything outside of things like IndyCar and Formula One that are fixed single seater engine manufactured backed contracts. A lot of us drivers have a decision we can make. So and I've had this decision. My friends have different opinions on this decision. So you can sign to a manufacturer, say a Mercedes, and you will be restricted to only drive Mercedes cars. You'll be on a nice contract, but they will pick and choose what you drive. So you could end up driving 3 races a year or 30 races a year, but it's very much up to them. Or you can have the decision where outside of Formula One, the way motorsport actually works is like if you were a footballer signing to a team that was sponsored by Puma, if Manchester United or whoever's sponsored by Puma or one sponsored by Reebok, when you move teams, you'll move from Puma to Reebok. So the team, for instance, I might drive for a team that hire me who run McLarens, but if I'm signed to that team, not to McLaren. So then if I go to another team that run Porsches, I'm working for that team who run Porsches. So it's almost a byproduct. So because I'm not currently signed to a specific manufacturer, even though I'm very close to McLaren and I'd say 80% of what I do is McLaren, they have no objection for me to drive other cars as long as it's not in the same championship against their cars. So if I'm in a Mustang in a classic race in Silverstone where there's no McLarens, obviously, it's no issue to them at all. If I'm racing in a Mercedes, but it's in a totally different level or country, for instance, in an American championship rather than a European championship, they have nothing against it. It's only if I chose to race in the same championship one weekend in a totally other team with Mercedes against McLaren, they'd go, well, hang on a minute. So that leaves me very open to pick and choose between other championships, which I love because it keeps me sharp from classics to modern cars, and I get to race all over the world, and I get to be kind of the decision of, to choose my own destiny rather than they do it.
And sometimes we see you're not then embroiled in the politics that sometimes go with it. If you're the number one driver, the two driver, you see sometimes there's those clashes of personalities, and so I think that's really nice.
And also it adds
freedom.
freedom and interestingness to your platform. You're such an interesting account to follow. The variety of the different cars, the Mustang. In fact, you've got the Mustang, because you took me out for a spin in the Mustang around Oli Edge way back in 2012 or something.
Yeah.
Eleanor, is
Yes.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
She has a name.
Pimping around the streets of Old Edge.
Me, Ollie, and Eleanor. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it was around the time that I met Kim.
That's
I know. Yes. Ollie was part of matchmaking me with Kim, and that's how we got together. So, that was an era, wasn't it, Ollie, when we first met? And in fact, just we're slightly digressing here, but that's what we do on the sofa. We tangent, don't we? You reached out to me about an event you're doing at Revolution in Wilmslow, or more appropriate, I should call it Revs now. But Kim was a grid girl, inverted commas, that night, along with some others, sort of with handing out the sliders and the canapes and things. And I did a giant chocolate plaque for you, or something, with the logo.
That was it. Yeah. It was a charity event for Starlight, and I reached out to you and I was like, this would be great. I wanted local people around to be involved in this event. And we ended up meeting. You showed me what you did. I got to go behind the scenes of the Choc World when we first met, and go and see how it was all made. And we met quite a few people that night, how it all ended up working, which was great networking for a great cause and great fun. And we had some cool cars outside, and we went around in Eleanor, didn't we, for a bit? Yeah,
we did. It was a great time. And the first thing, I got this email from another Ollie. I hadn't really met many Ollies. I'm like, he's called Ollie, and then he's a racing driver. This is interesting. And we just became friends right then, didn't we? But it's funny when we look back, because Kim and I didn't actually meet that night. I think we noticed each other, it's fair to say, but then we met later. And I think you were doing something at the Old Edge Christmas lights switch on, and I don't know.
Yeah.
We're going back now, but reminiscing. Big part of the story, though.
It's all very important. And what a fantastic match, mate, with Kim. How good is Kim?
And the little one later, with they're friends, aren't they? My little girl, Romy,
together more often.
And Callie.
Great. They saw each other last week.
Brilliant. And go back to I think you are an inspiration for the younger drivers in terms of pivoting towards the making yourself relevant to through social media, and as a way of getting extra revenue. I'm sure those aspiring, everything you just said in part one about how much it cost, and I think you're pioneering in the world of motorsport, that influencing, and I'm sure you've worked with really leading brands over the years. And how important is that to you now? Do you just do it off the cuff now?
I'd say now it becomes a little bit more natural, and it's less forced. At the time, it was very. I knew I needed to do that. Not only, like I said, for everything that I needed to work on the side to make sure I could stay in motorsport and be relevant in motorsport, but also because I was not blind to the fact that if I wasn't in the best equipment and I wasn't right at the front, I also needed to be diversified and different and selected for a reason. Even if I was in the best equipment, the same in Formula One, it's hundredths of a second or tenths of a second that split people apart. And if you are a couple of tenths of a second slower than someone else, but have millions you can bring to the table, you get selected. If you're the quickest, you can get selected. But because both of those options are very hard, I tried to work everything else I could on the side. Like I said, everything I selected at school was to do with either being good at sponsorship proposals or making cool videos online related to my racing, so that if there was 100 drivers exactly as quick as each other, but the meeting I went into, they'd heard of 3 names, I needed to make sure it was one of my names that they'd heard of. And then you can kind of deal with the fact of whether you're quick or not afterwards. But you'll only get to prove yourself if you've been heard of and selected in the first place. So I did business studies at school, photography and videography. Used to have a little camcorder I used to give to my manager at the time, who would film me on the track, literally in like kind of you've been framed fuzzy video style format. And that naturally progressed to when Instagram came out. I just used it as a storyboard to post what I did. I didn't have any agenda other than that. And I think because I started it early and because I'm incredibly lucky to do a very cool thing, I was traveling and racing different cars, it grew totally naturally. And then it led from, you know, an event where I would go and get I don't know, a free stay somewhere to getting full sponsorship packages from incredibly well-known brands through that. And it changed so much social media and sponsorship to a point where there were times where at the start, you know, when Coca-Cola used to plaster their, or Shell or Vodafone, their logo on the side of a car, and all it was just to be seen on the side of a McLaren or whatever. This huge shift in business where some of the proposals I was doing, where I would offer the VIP packages, they would come, the logo would be on the side of the car, they'd be able to network with X, Y, and Z, and they'd say, "Oh, that's great, but we'd rather you just post online about X, Y, and Z." It was just a shock to me how it diversified and changed because it's quantifiable. They can track if you 700,000 people or whatever across your socials, and 5% of them or 10% of them have seen that, what age they are, where they live, and if they've bought something, rather than the page in the Daily Mail. You have no idea who's seen it. It's just so much more quantifiable, and I found that really interesting. So yeah, I still post every day now, a little bit more selfishly, just for myself. If someone likes it, great. If not, don't try too hard because it's worked and it's done its job already, and I'm in the car all the time now.
It's brilliant.
Which means you're being authentic, and that's crucial in social media, I think, isn't it? Authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again, that authenticity has just made it easy, and it grows naturally. Obviously, there's a lot more people online now doing the same thing, so in a sense, it's harder to grow for that. But I'm still able to do, you know, very cool things and be myself authentically on that, which is great that some people follow it.
You touched on your stay living in America. Can we just touch on that? How many years were you there?
So I was only there a couple of years, living, kept visiting after that. I got a contract to race in America, and that involved living in Indianapolis. Now, it's not the most exciting place in America, but for what I did, it was hugely relevant. It was by the Indy 500 racetrack. It was by Sam Schmidt Motorsports, where the team was. I would be in the gym every single day, in the team workshop, on the sim every single day. And that served its purpose, and it was great. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I was living, breathing, and eating only motorsport, and it was straight back to this house, 20 years old, totally alone, sleep, repeat, and that eventually draw a little bit thin that I needed a little bit more of a life outside of that. So I moved more West Coast, kind of Santa Monica, LA, but still dedicated to the cause. So I wasn't too distracted by how incredible that was over there. But America holds a very special place in my heart, and one day would love to move back there and love it out there.
Because traveling, as you said in part one, it seems to be like after this you're heading to the airport, you're going to be Monza based, but also was it the back end of last year you relocated to Dubai? Is that right, or was that
Yes.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
And the Dubai experience, do you want to share to the listeners why Dubai?
Yeah, so, well, to touch on what you said first before I go to Dubai, it is a constant. I feel like I'm split in terms of what my head's want. It's a constant battle in my own head between being in airports and different hotels and feeling tired and asking why I'm doing this to myself, but also I can never sit still. So as soon as I do get a minute to sit still, I want to be traveling again to get towards the next place. So it is this constant buzz of moving around and traveling that I think is the kind of band-aid on the shark wound of the adrenaline for not being in a car.
I wanted to ask about travel because, you know, you travel a lot. You've been to a lot of places. I remember asking you once about what's your favourite place. Do you remember what your answer was, Ollie? Should I tell you?
Is it ages ago? Wait, so this was ages ago. You asked me what my favourite place was.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my favourite place. How can
in the world?
Yeah.
This is really hard because it depends when in my life you ask me. It's either going to be sat on the beach in the Maldives in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, which I think is everyone's dream place.
That's a good answer.
Point.
Yeah, that'll do.
Are you asking what my favourite place was? Okay,
I'll tell you.
Okay, go on.
You said Budapest. I've never been. I want to go, but I've never been. That was your answer.
I must have just got back from Budapest. Had a really good time. I tell you what, so I guess people do change. I definitely wouldn't pick Budapest anymore. It's an awesome place. It is an awesome, awesome place. But not somewhere I'd settle down, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a lovely city.
Really?
Steeped
I believe
in
so.
history. Got the river. I think you got Buda and Pest. I think they've got the
Yes,
river in
yeah, and then
between,
the big bridge
and you've got
between.
those what do they call them? Hamans. Oh god,
Yeah, I must
they're
have just been
Turkish
to a hammam. That's why I probably answered
Haman,
that.
like Turkish baths
Oh,
thing, but it's quite a big thing of the culture over
I'd
there
love
in
to do that.
Hungary. No, it's really good. It's a good place to go. Don't think it'd be your favorite place now, would it?
No, I don't think no to live. So yeah, living now is Dubai really. Dubai is where I effectively on paper live. It's I still I'm still a country boy. I think I'll never live in Dubai forever, but Dubai is somewhere I've been visiting for a long, long time. It's where Nala, the mother of Kali, the
Yeah.
mother of our child, is she's Lebanese. She's lived in Dubai before. It worked well for our family. There's multiple reasons I moved there. The second half of all my race championship years are based in Asia or in the UAE. There's a lot more that goes on there. We've won the Dubai 24-hour and Golf 12-hour and these races that are based over there. So I got the opportunity to get a golden sporting visa to move there. So it all felt like it was at the right time, right place. I knew Dubai. I had good contacts. Post COVID, it had become so much more of a community than it used to be. I used to go there, and after a week, I'd be very drained. You know, I had the most amazing time, but it was like Disneyland. I'd leave and I'd need a bit of a rest. Whereas now, I have a different Dubai experience. I live a family lifestyle experience. I spend time with Cali when I can. I'm working there. I'm going to the track. I'm shopping at different stores. I'm not eating out in the same restaurants. And Dubai is and this is speaking from experience and not from perception that you might see online. Dubai is a very affordable place to live if you do it correctly, and I'd say cheaper than Europe if you do it correctly. So it's a bit of a shock to some people because people only post their favorite things online. Now, of course,
Yeah.
if I cook myself dinner one night and then go to a local cafe the next and then eat in the Burj Khalifa on the third night, you're going to post the Burj Khalifa because it's very cool.
Yeah.
That's not where we're eating every single
Every
night.
single night. Yeah.
So yeah, it's very different online to real life.
Well, my wife lived 19 years in Dubai as a stewardess, cabin crew for Emirates, and she used to live in Spinneys. You know, she wasn't going to the
Yeah.
supermarket. She wasn't going out to the Burj Khalifa every night,
Yeah.
and it's actually affordable. She lived near the Irish Village, and a lot of the cabin crew live, and she's got many happy memories of the Dubai lifestyle. But I think also because of all the other events and tournaments you do, the Gulf Historic and Asian Le Mans, it's a good hub. I see a lot of golfers doing that who, you know, maybe on the European tour, but is it the European tour? No, because they're playing Japan and they're playing Dubai, Abu Dhabi. So I think everything, and then that golden visa, which I didn't know they offered, is for a sporting visa. It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
That's really cool.
One of the questions and Ollie started this off with the question is and I think Ollie, you touched on in the last 10 years, but where does Oli Webb see himself in 2034?
That's a good question because I normally think in 1 year to the next, but generally because of motorsport contracts, and that dictates where I end up living. I definitely see myself in the UAE for the next few years. I'm not sure about in 10 years. Who knows? The way it's changed in the last 10 years, then maybe. But I think I very much enjoyed. I know that motorsport has a short lifespan, longer than it used to. You know, you can be in Fernando Alonso's proving that in Formula One, and other people are proving that endurance that you can be into your late 40s, but then 50s becomes a bit of a push to be doing it properly. So I've done commentary for IndyCar. I've commentated on Le Mans 24-hour itself. One of the years that I didn't race, I ended up commentating for the race for Eurosport, presenting for Sky on the side. So that kind of that side of it, I'm doing it in conjunction so that I have something to fall back on, and actually really enjoyed doing it because the first few times I did it, I found it very strange. There was a bit of depression that hit when you're commentating on someone else on a podium that you feel you belong on. So
That's
navigating that kind of emotion and reflecting towards enjoying the fact that you're still in the 1% that's commentating on it, and you've done it before and you've done it many times, and you should enjoy that. And you got a picture that I'm now 33 and there might be a 19-year-old that is quicker than you and better than you that might be coming in. So swallowing that with pride and moving on to the championships that I do, I think I see myself in 10 years, hopefully still racing, probably not to the same level, but still very active. I do a lot of the classic racing at the moment, which you can do for a lot longer. Commentating, presenting within motorsport. But I also have a mental struggle, and it's not that exciting to talk about in terms of the finance side, but this mental struggle of understanding that because of our contracts are always 1 year at a time, we're out of a job at the end of every year, is the lifestyle we currently have with living in Dubai and with wanting to always be active and everything else. Money comes in, it goes out very quickly as well at the same time. So there's not much huge saving going on. There's also not much money in the background that happens. I come from an industry where you work for a day, you earn X, you go back home. Whereas a lot of my friends that I was in school with, maybe in the finance sector or in something else or in product or in whatever, they have an annual income that when they're asleep, they're effectively, I call it making money while you're asleep, which is if I broke my leg today, 90% of my income would disappear. So I'm very conscious and have a mental struggle with the fact that I only want to do what I love, but at the same time, I'm aware that I need to take the finance I'm making at the moment and apply it to something I might not love as much, but gives me a good life for when I'm
So,
not able to do that.
on that note, what would you do if you weren't in the racing world at all?
Fighter pilot.
Ah,
Good answer.
Maybe not fighter pilot, but there used to be something called Red Bull Air Race, which they don't do anymore because it's too dangerous. But it's literally basically racing in the skies. So maybe that's a bit of a fake answer because it's still kind of the same as motorsport. I have no idea. I would not like to do anything.
I think, I mean, sorry for interjecting, but I think you've got this business head on. Before we came on air, we showed you the clip of John Wilkin, our first guest, ex-Rugby League England captain, 500 appearances for St. Helens, but you were quite captivated by his interview in terms of the least interesting part of his career was his rugby, but yeah, he's defined by that. But I think he knew he always wanted to go into business. You might, as I see it, be that reluctant businessman that you will be very good at what you do because you show all those, as speaking as a businessman, all those attributes of tenacity, all those emails you sent out to get the sponsorship. And I think you've got that in abundance. However, you are incredibly charismatic, very engaging, and it would be a shame if the motorsport industry were to kind of lose you if he went away. I could see him like there being the Martin Brundle on the pit lane. Do you know Martin?
love that. Yes.
My sister's fiance, Simon, he's a petrol head, proper petrol head. And I was doing my research and I said, Simon, and he was talking about should the Mulsanne thing. I said, we're not a petrol head podcast, Simon. Chill out. Should we have two chicanes? No. This is not the podcast for that. But he did say about, the presenting, he really enjoys listening to you presenting. So I just think it's something that you're already a businessman without probably knowing it.
And trusting the journey, trusting the process. You're already doing it, aren't you?
Yeah. I think, it's some. I'll be involved in motorsport in some capacity, maybe as a manager, and apply the skills off the track that I've learned from getting myself there and help someone else get there. And I find that exciting because it would keep me in the paddock and keep an income coming in, even when I'm maybe physically not as able to be in the car as well as I was before. But
yeah,
I'm part excited by the fact that I never know year to year what I'm doing, and part dreading it. Well, I guess it's the same.
You like the uncertainty.
Yes,
yeah.
Do you know we touched on last episode about MYM, make yourself memorable?
Yeah.
But all those track days where I presume you're with the corporate, you're being MYM, aren't you? You're making yourself memorable by doing all those things. They're the ones that keep you in check. And I bet you're switched on in terms of, great day with at BMW, great day with that. So what I'm saying is you're doing it already.
Yeah.
On that note, because that just reminded me of a movie. You always get that in the movie, don't you? Where like the. I think I'm thinking of.
I forgot to mention the last episode. I've got a great recommendation. On Apple.
Okay.
Presumed Innocent. This has nothing to do with Oli Webb, but it does because you need to download it. Have you got Apple TV?
Yes. Okay.
Presumed Innocent.
Travels.
Did we mention the last episode?
We mentioned it in the mini app, but
no, but Ollie travels. Can you just take my recommendation?
Is it a film or series?
It's a boxer.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
I'm not going to tell you any more.
Okay.
Presumed Innocent.
Love that.
You're flying to Bologna today, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bologna. Go with it.
Nice. Great city, Bologna.
But I was just thinking movies because it got me thinking of, like the ex-racing driver going into management, reminded me of Mighty Ducks. That guy's like the ex-skate ice hockey player and he becomes the coach. I love that film. But the movies, you have been in movies and you've been obviously a racing driver. You've played Top Gear was one. I don't know how much we can reveal here, but yeah.
See stick. No.
No, I wish. Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to do a lot of stunt driving for different films, from Mission Impossible, The Mummy, Men in Black. Things
Men
you
in
don't,
Black, that's so
things you
cool.
don't think you need stunt driving for, but those alien cars don't drive themselves. So it's face is never on screen. So stunt driving is both incredibly exciting and incredibly boring at the same time, because you will do the same scene over and over and over and over again. A lot of it ends up being CGI. You end up in a 1 minute you're driving a car backwards down the stairs and it's the best day ever and it's very cool. The next
Wow.
minute you're in a taxi cab doing 5 mile an hour 100 times from
Wow.
point A to point B, because something I never realized when I started stunt driving is you see the chase scene through London going in between all the cars, and there's these two cars, and you're like, oh, I want to be one of those two cars. But every single car on screen has to have a stunt driver in. So you could be the person on the bike or the person walking their dog or the person in the taxi cab that just has to sit there and make sure they're not hit. So unless you're the main stunt driver, which obviously your more famous stunt drivers like your Ben Collinses and these people who do it full time, then you're in the B roll, which still you get to do cool stuff, but isn't always as exciting. But you then get to go to the cinema and be like, oh, I did that
That is
scene
so
there.
cool.
And obviously, there's the F1 film. I say obviously for anyone who's into F1, there's an F1 film being filmed now with Brad Pitt. So the downside to the stunt driving gigs are, because they're so unique, especially with this Formula One gig where all the cars are very trick, they're doing it properly. They are Formula 2 cars and Formula 1 cars. So you need proper drivers. It can't be Joe Bloggs in them. It took a long time to train Brad Pitt to get into the faster car to be driving it. So my 5 friends who are doing the stunt driving for that film, when I'm at a race weekend, will be there with Brad Pitt in the background in between sessions training and with him. But the downside to stunt driving is when you get offered the job, they'll say, okay, here's the job, here's the pay, it's a Brad Pitt movie, and you're all excited, oh, this is great, and these are all the dates that need you. And if you can't do one of these 500 days or 400 days over the next 3 years,
You're
because
out.
obviously it takes forever to film, you're out. You've
Wow.
got to do every day or nothing. So and that's for the right reasons, because when you are driving, this film in particular is going to be so realistic and so unique in the fact that they are going to all the same tracks as Formula One, and they're going to these actual events, driving the same cars with stunt drivers in their own sessions, and they will be doing 150, 200 mile an hour wheel to wheel, and you need to trust that person and know their body language, because our body language transmits through the steering wheel into the car, and that becomes the body language of the car. So you need to trust your co-driver intrinsically. So you can't just hire someone and introduce them in the morning and then go and tell them to do this scene, because it will end in a fatal crash. So I didn't get to do that job, unfortunately, but I have good friends on it and they are incredible at what they do. And that's also another job role you can go into. Ex-Formula 2 champion and good friend of mine, Luciano Becchetta, is now the stunt driver for that film, but also he writes and conditions all of these scenes, and he's now effectively going to be a movie director for these very cool films and gets to train Brad Pitt. So it's
mega.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Wow.
It could be part of the future. I'm sure it will be. It's
Yeah.
exciting. Just remember that quote: "Alien cars don't drive themselves. Sorry, Oli Webb does."
One of the questions, look, we're conscious you've got to jump on a plane.
No
quickly.
problem.
One of the questions that we ask on the podcast is, what part of the week is your happy place?
It used to be after, and it still is to a point, but it used to be after a good day on the track, nice meal with the race team, come back, shower, and then alone in a hotel room with a really good series, or just like watching The Office or Friends or something that is like a lot of those series that I've seen 1,000 times are really good mental therapy for me. And when I'm in a place, what I really like is being in a place where I've had, I guess everyone to a point where you've had a good day and you're about to have another good day and you're in that in between. It's almost like the Saturday of a weekend when you've still got one more day and you've just had the Friday. It's not the Sunday night where you're technically still on the weekend, but you know you've got work in the morning. Now it's a little bit different, obviously, because it's this rush back to want to see Callie, whose full name is California, hence the dream to go back to America one day. That's the excitement now, is to get back to see her, and I make sure I never go more than a full week without seeing her. There's been times where it's had to be 2 weeks, and that's always tough, but I try and race weekends are generally Thursday night to Sunday. Sometimes there's other gigs and roles I try and fit into Wednesday, Thursday. So kind of my Monday, Tuesday is my Cali day, and I get to come back to her. It's full on because if I do get a day off, it will be filled fully with her. But again, another reason for being in the UAE, we're extremely lucky to have not only Nyla, Cali's mother, is around to be with her, but also we have a nanny, which we love and Cali loves. So it means that I can take jobs at the drop of a hat, but I can also say no to them now. So really loving our kind of family lifestyle at the moment.
Great
answer. I did want to know, Ollie, about, because I know how busy you are and what a schedule you've got, and you run that yourself. How do you keep yourself so organized?
I've always had this. I don't want to call it an OCD, because I've got a friend who's got OCD and said you've got to stop calling it OCD. It's not OCD. That's different. But this, like, for me, I use that phrase because for me it's way more intrinsically ingrained and feels like a diagnosis rather than just a passion. That I am very organized, orientated,
and you enjoy
schedules and timing. Yes, but I feel the reason why I give it a name, and I don't know what that would be if it wouldn't be a compulsive thing, is that I don't want to be like that, but I have to be like that, and I am like that. So timings are really important for me. I'm very strict with that. I'm very kind of logical with my diary. I do have help and Debbie and Ruth and PA and a team that really help me on the side of let's say the finances and invoicing, and that side I can relieve that side, no problem. But even though I have the ability to have someone to book all of my logistics and flight, first of all, I would never put someone through that headache. And second of all, I have to retain control of that because I know what works for me. I know the airports I like. I know the places I like. I know the car hire companies I like. And if I physically have 5 minutes spare a day to do it, I would like to do it and keep control of that. So it gives me the ability to know where I'm going to be at what time, and to know that if something changes last minute, I don't have to rely on someone else. I want to rely on myself. And if someone's asleep at 1 a.m. and they've booked the flight and they've got the confirmation, it's just been changed that I now have to go actually to California instead of Dubai because this job role's changed, then I retain control of that.
So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
to me.
it's a bit like when you're booking a train, window seat, table seat, plug socket, it's kind of the little
you just know your
details.
preferences, don't you? And that works for me. And once I book it and I do it, it goes in my Excel sheet, and I like keeping all my lists, and I've got lists that I keep on my phone. But like when you mentioned that film, it goes straight into a list which is called recommendations. I have a to-do list, an invoice list, a recommendation list, and then I have maybe it is OCD. I have a list of every country I've been to and all the contacts from that country, so that when I go to somewhere I've not been in like 5 years, I can go, right, LA, I've not been there in a few years. Click on LA. Right, these are the hotels that I like. These are the places I like, and it's just. I feel safe when I have that kind of baseline. Maybe I just don't trust my memory. That's what it is.
I often say that the notes in my phone is like a search engine for my brain, because I'll put things like people's names that I want to remember and stuff. It's all there. So I get that.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Because that, like I said, we're not a motorsport podcast, but just hearing that, elite racing driver, best in class, multiple winner.
Yeah.
Still go back to series champion, Le Mans 2014. I doff the cap, sir.
Yes.
Listen, Ollie, thank you so much on behalf of Ollie and I and all the Sofa Stories team for taking the time out of your busy, busy schedule. We've really, really enjoyed having you on the Ruxley for Sofa Stories. In bocca al lupo, which means good luck in Italian, for Monza, questa settimana. And you're a top man. And thank you so much. Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Cheers, Ollie.
Cheers.
Ciao.